Hi, I'm Richard Wells and I'm going to show you how your kids can make a game of gorilla tag on their iPads, hopefully in about 10 minutes. By sharing the game making experience, the students can collaborate on advancing the game to further levels. We're going to use an app called Hopscotch to do this. You'll find it free in the App Store. When you open up Hopscotch, you can click on the Me page. That's where it will store all of the students' games. And once you're on the Me page, you can start to create yourself a new game by clicking the Create button. We're going to start a blank project on the left-hand side there, and you start by adding yourself a character. It's gorilla tag, so I'm going to stick with the gorilla. So once you've got a character, they need rules. So we click Add a Rule, and right from the beginning of the game, when the play button is tapped, we have these when commands. And this when command for when the play button is tapped needs an ability for the gorilla. And abilities are sections of code that are titled. So this ability is to randomly run around. This is the gorilla I'm going to chase to play my game of tag. So now there's an ability called random run around. I need to tell the gorilla how to do that. So down under movement, you'll find in the orange section, I can tell the gorilla to first turn in a certain direction. But if I always told him to turn in the same degrees, it would be too predictable and not much of a game. So fortunately, when you're dealing with numbers, Hopscotch allows you to randomly give it a range. And I'm going to go between -120 to the left, and I'm going to say 120 degrees to the right. And it will choose every time it randomly runs around somewhere between those two numbers. I can also randomly set a speed. So under orange, I can drag in another command, set the speed, make sure it's inside your ability. And in this ability, I can set another random number, somewhere between 500 speed and 2000 speed. Each time it will run a different number between those two. Also in the orange, you'll find move, and I can randomly choose a number between 100 dots on the screen and 300 dots on the screen. The issue here is that I've just told him to just turn and move once. So if it's a game of tag, I need him to be repeating that forever through the game. Under the game control, the blue code, repeat forever is one of the commands. So I can now drag this on, make sure it's inside your ability, and I can now put my random runaround inside a repeat forever, making the gorilla continuously run round for the whole game. Now it's more like a game of tag. Let's have a look at that. Press play in the top corner, and all of a sudden I've got quite a random gorilla. Let's go and edit in the top corner and carry on. We'll close down the gorilla's code because let's put some information on the screen. So under plus we can add a text character because I just want some points on the screen. So the first thing is to add a text character called points so that there's a title at the top of the screen that says points. Now we add another text character and we'll give it a 0. This will be the actual points, but the 0 needs to change, so the 0 needs rules. We click add rule, and one of the other when commands is when a character is tapped, which is quite lucky in a game of tag. So we drag this on, but it's not the 0 that I'll be tagging, it's the gorilla. So I click the 0 and I change it to the gorilla. Now when the gorilla is tapped, I'm going to award myself a point. Now points is information. That's a number inside the game, it's a variable. So under the yellow values, I can increase my points by increasing a value. Points at the moment doesn't exist. So under the whole, I'm going to switch across to the whole iPad's values because everybody needs to know about points. And I'm going to go down to the bottom where it says new, and I'm going to create a new piece of information, a new value called points. Now my game knows about something called points. So I now click the points, and when the gorilla is tapped, I increase points by 1. The issue is that points is now known by the iPad, but it hasn't changed it on the screen. So what I actually have to do is tell the 0 to match the points information. Under the 0's looks in the green code, I can set the text to match the value of points. So instead of a number, I click values. I make sure I'm on my iPad values where I will now find points. So now when my gorilla is tapped, the points will change by 1 and the 0 will reflect those points on the screen. Make sure you make everything an ability. So even now I can click plus on the abilities and tell the game that that is how you score a point. I can drag this on and make sure my 2 new bits of code are inside that ability, meaning I can now give that ability to other moments in the game nice and quickly. Now when I tap my gorilla, I get a point. Let's move the points across, because let's put some urgency on this game and finish it off with some time. So I'm going to put a text object on the screen, just put time, move that to the top, and of course add another text character so that I can give myself 30 seconds. Let's start this at 30, but of course the 30 is going to change, so it needs a rule. So I add a rule to the 30 by clicking add rule, and right from the beginning of the game, when the play button is tapped, it needs an ability to count down from 30. So let's give it an ability to count down, and inside this ability to count down from 30, I first of all need to start information or a value of time at 30. So I set the value, and of course my game doesn't know about time at the moment, so I give the iPad values a new one called time. I set the value of time to 30 seconds. But now I've got to get it to change that value 30 times all the way down to 0. So under the blue, in my ability to count down, I need to repeat 30 changes. So repeat 30 times. Set my text on the screen. That's the 30 that's on the screen at the moment. I need to change that so it reflects the time. So under iPad values, I will find time. Now I need to make sure it waits 1 second before doing anything else. So under the blue game control, I find wait. And in games in computers we deal with milliseconds. So I need to set 1,000 milliseconds, which will mean it will wait for 1 second. And then I need to actually decrease the time value by 1. Now, annoyingly, they've named it increase, but I can still set it to -1. So after a second, I can change the value of time by -1. Now, by repeating that 30 times, it will slowly count down and change the number on the screen from 30 all the way down to 0. Once it's got to 0, all I need to finish my game off is a final score. So here I need a new piece of information called final score, so I create a yellow value called final score for the whole iPad. I drag this on, and at the end of the game I simply set that to whatever points they've got at the moment. Now, to make the game finish, I need to make my gorilla disappear. So on the gorilla's new rule, I'm going to find more when commands by clicking more and add the equals when command. You'll see what this means in a second, because when the time gets all the way down to 1, so I need to find my iPad values and set my when command to have a look at time. When time is all the way down at 1, I want my gorilla to disappear. So under the gorilla's looks, in the green code, I can set an invisibility, and this will only happen when the time gets to 1, and I can set invisibility to 100%, making my gorilla disappear at the end of the game, because I wouldn't want the student continuously trying to tag them. Now I'm going to add a text element to finish my game off called final score. I just want the final score to be shown on the screen. When the play button is tapped, I do not want to see this final score, so when the play button is tapped, I'm going to set invisibility to 100%. That's the first rule for my final score. I'm also going to make it nice and big though when it does show by using the grow command, and it's going to grow by 300%. That's the first rule for final score. Another rule for final score is that at the end of the game, just like the gorilla disappearing, I need to say that when the time for the iPad, when the iPad's time equals 0, I want to have the final score on the screen. So I first of all set the text so that it matches the final score that's been set, and then I get the invisibility all the way down to 0 so that it reappears on the screen to end the game. Invisibility 0. When I play my game, my values change, and at the end of the game, when I get down to 0, the gorilla disappears and my final score appears on the screen. Now the game is complete, the next challenge is to try and make this game harder or easier and consider how that would be done. You will find students with this knowledge making much more advanced games very quickly and surprising you with how easily they can self-direct their learning in this type of app. I hope you enjoy this lesson.